What is going on, Coug fans? This is the first live stream, the Couch GM teaming up with CougFan.com. Thank you for tuning in. Right now, we're calling it Cougs on the Couch GM. We'll see if we change the name. Recommendations, welcome in the comment section. But yeah, we're partnering up with CougFan.com. So for all things Cougar Athletics, make sure to visit CougFan.com. Become a premium subscriber. They have all of the inside details of all things Cougar Athletics. If you enjoy any of our podcasts that we do on Cougar Athletics, you're going to love CougFan.com. That's where we get a ton of our material. So check them out. First off, Dylan, thanks for jumping on the podcast. And we got an agenda to cover today. First, we're going to talk about WSU versus Gonzaga. That's going to be a big one. We got Jalen Wells in the All-Stars Futures game. We got you just had on a Memphis reporter talking Memphis, Jalen Wells, Pac-12. So we'll get into some of that realignment stuff. We'll also get into women's basketball. We've got baseball, and then we'll get into football to wrap it up. So to start, we got WSU versus Gonzaga tonight. WSU is hosting Gonzaga at 6 p.m. This will be the first time that Gonzaga is in Pullman since December 2015. WSU's last win versus Gonzaga was back in Pullman in 2010 when junior guard Klay Thompson flirted with a quadruple double. He had 24 points, 7 steals, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Dylan, what are your thoughts heading into tonight's game against Gonzaga?
What's funny, it's like Cougs always find their way back home. My first ever Cougar basketball game was 2015, was the last game in Pullman between Gonzaga and WSU. Kyle Wilcher gave us buckets that night. I believe it was like a 89-81 game, but finally back in Beasley Coliseum, and it's an expected sellout tonight. We'll see how many Zag fans are here and make the trek. The hope is that the student section is going to have their best showing of the season, and really, this is like the biggest game for WSU until they get to the West Coast Conference tournament. And, a lot has happened since their 13-3 start. Obviously we had Cedric Coward go down early in the year. He's out for the season. Marcus Wilson out for the season. You dealt with Rahard Favors being out for games. There's just been a lot of injury woes this season. After that 13-3 start, they go 2-8 and really kind of have muffled their seeding for the West Coast Conference. And the seeding is so important in this conference because they have it set up essentially to help St. Mary's and the Gonzagas of the world, where, hey, if you finish top 2 in the West Coast Conference, you're automatically in the WCC semifinals. So it's just 2 wins and you get that automatic bid. Well, right now the Cougs I think they're 6th or 7th in the conference, trailing LMU. They are 7th. So they're 6-8 in conference play. LMU's 7-8 in conference play. I don't think they're going to be able to catch Oregon State in the standings. So I think 6th place is going to be the best you can do in terms of getting better seeding. So none of these guys have played in an environment like they're going to play in tonight at home. So the first off is jitters and be able to handle, having a big crowd and playing a marquee team like Gonzaga. And yeah, people might say, well, hey, they're 20-7. They're not as great as they are in previous years. This is still a very good Gonzaga team. If you follow Evan Mia's analytics and metrics, he still has them as one of the 16 best teams in the country, and a sleeper team to make a run into the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. So, big game tonight, and this is a big game for David Riley too. How he's going to game plan that first half up in Gonzaga and Spokane. The Cougs had the lead for most of the first half and went into the second half trailing 3, and then a 24-7 run by Gonzaga kind of broke it up. And so, how careless are they going to be with the basketball tonight? Because you cannot turn the ball over 12 plus times against a team like Gonzaga. And we already know it's the turnover woes that have been the Achilles heel for this team. So you're going to have big games from your senior leaders and Ethan Price, Dane Erikstrup. He's got to stay out of foul trouble tonight. And Gonzaga's bigs are some of the best in terms of getting their opponents to foul. So it's going to be an interesting one tonight. Beasley holds around 11,500. You can expect that place to be packed up tonight, and I'm excited. It's ESPN2. I think Dave Fleming on the call. It's going to be a good one. So, in my opinion, I think the Cougs are going to be able to hang around in the first half. But I'm just not sold on them taking care of the basketball still. So, it's going to be an interesting one. I know Pullman's probably buzzing right now. Folks, if you're watching, give us a comment. Let us know if you're showing up. So, it's, 9 years in the making, coming back to Pullman.
And Gonzaga won the last contest against WSU 88-75. WSU is currently 16-11, 6-8 in the WCC. Gonzaga is 20-7. They're 11-3 in the WCC, 2 games back of St. Mary's. So taking it back to the beginning of this year, what were your expectations coming into the season, and how have things played out so far up to this point compared to what you thought would happen coming into the season?
Expectation wise, I thought this team had a chance at making the NIT tournament. And I think that would have been a fantastic year one goal for David Riley and his staff, especially after what they lost. I mean, you take a look, you have 2 guys on that team last year that made the tournament, Isaac Jones, Jalen Wells, that are playing in the NBA. Isaac Jones, 2-way contract. He's bouncing in between the Sacramento Kings and their G League affiliate. And then you have Jalen Wells, who we'll get into his story, 39th overall pick, and made the Rising Stars Challenge. The way the format was set up, ends up sneaking into the All-Star game over the weekend. So you had other guys like Miles Rice transfer to Indiana, Ruben Chinyelu transfer to Florida. Florida's looking like a number 1 seed right now. So you have a lot of these players that were on this Kyle Smith roster last year that are doing big things at other schools. So David Riley had to come in, and he was able to bring in 4 guys from Eastern Washington that knew his system, that have, been in his system, in Lawan Watts, Ethan Price, Dane Erikstrup, and Cedric Howard. But the big thing was Cedric Howard getting hurt. And, at the time in December, we didn't know how long the length would be until it finally was announced that it was a shoulder surgery and he'd be out for the entirety of the year. That quickly changed kind of like the complexion of what we thought the season would be. But then they go on the road, they beat Nevada, they beat Boise State, they finished non-conference with a 10-3 record. And all of a sudden it's like the Shawshank Redemption, where it's Morgan Freeman going, hey, hope can be, hope can be a bad thing. Hope can drive a man crazy. And it might have drove me a little crazy at first, but I think eventually the tired legs caught up with with WSU, and the 8-man rotation. Also, the turnovers. I mean, this team turns the ball over far too much. And granted, that's going to happen in Riley's system, but we're talking about forced passes. How many times have we seen swing passes thrown out of bounds? How many times have we seen Nate Calmise running out of speed, kind of running out of whack in terms of, controlling the game? So today's going to be big for Nate Calmise and Lawan Watts, because those are your playmakers. Those are the guys that are going to be able to get inside and work inside out and open up shots on the outside for Dane Erikstrup, and Rahard Wavers and other guys that, are 3-point shooters. So, taking a look at the line tonight, what Vegas has to say, Gonzaga 12.5-point favorites on the road. This is a team that if you can keep them in a close game, they have not done well in close games this season. So the key for WSU is just keeping it close. getting into the second half, and anything can happen at that point. Isaiah Watts had a pretty interesting quote, at media availability the other day, and basically what he said is, a lot of their fans were talking trash, saying whatever to me. I'm that type of player that enjoys playing in front of big crowds. I love to talk a little trash, so I'm going to make sure I talk some trash tomorrow. Well, I just hope you're backing it up, all right? Like, it's easy to talk trash, but you got to back it up. So, I think our keys to the game, like I said, Nate Calmise and Lawan Watts, keeping track of the basketball, and creating opportunities for their teammates. I know Lawan's going to be hyped up tonight. He's a walking triple double. So it's going to be exciting to see this on ESPN2 as well. Finally, off of the Watch ESPN app, because man, there's been some brutal games in terms of just how they're put together. You have some announcers that aren't even in person this season. So it's going to be an exciting one. And those stats from Klay Thompson in that last win, 7 steals. I mean, almost a quadruple double, 24, 7, 6, and 6. That tells you how long it's been for the Cougs winning a game against Gonzaga in Pullman. Obviously, they didn't play for a certain amount of years. And that's a whole nother topic for Cougs. A lot of folks think, hey, Mark Few was scared to play Washington State. I understand both sides of it. It's like Washington State wasn't in a position for a resume building game for Mark Few, but it's a point where, you can have a 13-20 Washington State team still sell out Beasley and give you a run for your money. So, Gonzaga, taking a look at the bottom ticker here, overall 20-49 record in Pullman. I don't think that record says a lot during the Mark Few years. Obviously, those are a lot of older games stretching
and also
out
WSU
over
beating Gonzaga 98-53. I don't think that's been the case over the past decade or 20 years.
No. So, I know Pullman's going to be juiced tonight. Let's take a look at the weather. Let's take a look at what Pullman's weather is looking tonight. 34 degrees. It feels like 21. Oh, man, I miss it. I tell you what. We got snow is expected to start in 27 minutes. And it's looking like it's partial rain and partial snow leading up to game time tonight.
We'll see what the ratio of Gonzaga fans compared to Coug fans are, and if WSU can pack the house. So, yeah, that's tonight at 6:00. Make sure to tune in, ESPN2.
Yeah, I'd like to think there's probably at least 8,000 to 8,500 WSU fans, but it's a short drive, and it's going to kill me seeing a lot of Zag fans in there tonight if that's the case, because then we can't get students, we can't get fans to show up to games in the first place. I mean, averaging around 3,500 in attendance last year with a 25-8 team that made it. Won a game in the NCAA tournament. That's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Playing off of that, we got to talk Jalen Wells. As you mentioned, the second rounder last year, 6'8", 206. He's taken over the league by storm and has been one of the key contributors for the Memphis Grizzlies after getting drafted by them. Can you walk us through the Rising Stars Challenge? What exactly was different this year? And I've seen a bunch of former NBA stars that have been on ESPN talking about how they hate the new format, how they're like, hey, you Rising Stars, you're not an all-star, just to get it straight. Like, you shouldn't be on this court right now. Like, some of the guys are posturing like that. Like, you're not an all-star. I don't like this. What are your thoughts on the new format?
Yeah, Draymond Green was very outspoken on that during the broadcast. And, honestly, I hate to say it, but I agree with him. They don't deserve to be in the All-Star game. The way the All-Star format was set up this year was super wonky. They were playing to 40 points. I mean, somebody brought up a stat, like there was only 18 total minutes of game time. The NBA's got a lot of issues right now that they're trying to fix out. And you know what? Hey, they're trying new things. I don't think this is going to happen again next year. So I think Jalen Wells got pretty lucky in terms of getting this one off. But essentially the way it was set up was there was 4 teams in the Rising Stars Challenge. You had a G League team, and then you had 3 Rising Star teams of rookies or sophomores that were playing in the NBA. Jalen Wells was on Team C. They won their first game in that Rising Stars Challenge. And then the G League team happened to win their first game. So they got a little bit of an easier draw going into that Rising Stars Championship. They end up taking that on Friday night, and that moved Jalen Wells into the All-Star game. They got to play against Shaq's OGs. And, that's like LeBron,
Curry,
Kevin Durant. Yeah, Steph Curry, Dame Lillard. And, I wrote in a story last week on Jalen just how great of a 3-and-D player he's become. And Jonah Dillon of, a Memphis Grizzlies beat writer, as well as Memphis University out there in Memphis, jumped on with me. And, the first 5 games of the year, Jalen found himself into, the 8 or 9 man rotation for the Grizzlies because of the injuries that they had. Marcus Smart didn't start the year. You had Vince Jackson not playing and a couple other injuries, Jake LaRavia. So the 39th overall pick out of Washington State University found himself with some playing time early, and he ran away with it. After the 5th game of the year, Jalen started 49 straight games going into the All-Star break, averaging around 11 points per game. But the biggest thing is his 3-and-D. He's had 2 games against Dame Lillard this season. He held him to 5 of 27 shooting and under 10 points per game in both of those. So Jalen's not just like he can guard your point guard, your shooting guard, your stretch 3, your power forward. Essentially what Jonah Dillon told us is the Grizzlies are putting him on the best opposing player night in and night out, as long as it's not a center. His win shares show it. B-Ball Index also posted a pretty interesting stat. Jalen is 9th out of 10 players in terms of they get the hardest matchup night in and night out. So the stats prove it as well. He shut down players like LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, Damian Lillard. I mean, this is legitly the best NBA player Washington State University's had since Klay Thompson. The room for growth is just astronomical as well. And at the trade deadline, the Grizzlies shipped out Marcus Smart. They shipped out Jake LaRavia. They're all in on Jalen Wells. So it's just fantastic to see. This is a guy that started his career at Sonoma State, a Division II. Kyle Smith found him in the weeds. And it's a similar story to Jalen's career with WSU, like it is starting out with Memphis right now, because Jalen didn't start right away in that 2023-2024 season. He came on strong, and then once he got into that starting lineup, didn't lose it. And, the rest is history. They sweep Arizona. You've got the infamous 4-point play at Arizona. Jalen Wells hits the 3, fouled, gets the free throw, and Washington State leaves Arizona with a big time victory, and that kind of propelled them into being like, okay, national attention, like Washington State's for real this year. So it's just been so fun to watch, and also kind of touching on Sonoma State, Jalen had custom basketball shoes, Sonoma State shoes, and what they're going through right now is they're going to lose their entire athletic programs, baseball, basketball. They can't afford it anymore. Wow. So there was an interesting article too by one of Jonah Dillon's scribes, one of his mates out there, that essentially Sonoma State had an excess amount of money that they were trying to figure out how to use. They're not, everything's gone next year. So what they did is they took the whole basketball team to a Memphis Grizzlies game to watch Jalen Wells. Wow. So pretty cool aspect of what they were able to do there. It's sad to see, conference realignment. It might not be conference realignment, but you're seeing how it's affecting every level of college sports. It's sad to see. So, but Jalen has just been fantastic this year, and he's a guy that right now he's probably trailing Stephen Castle of the San Antonio Spurs for Rookie of the Year. I believe Jalen's live odds right now are like plus 450 or plus 500 for Rookie of the Year. The problem with him is he's playing in Memphis. Nobody cares about Memphis. They're dead last in attendance out there in the NBA. You see it with the actual university, Memphis. They're not getting people to their football games. They're not getting people to their basketball games. And we'll touch in to the realignment side of things and some of the quotes that Dr. Ed Scott, the athletic director there at Memphis, said in a pretty interesting interview at the end of January 30th, where he essentially is saying, they're still maybe waiting for another offer from the Pac-12. So it's just been really nice to see, and especially too, because we didn't know if Jalen was going to enter the transfer portal. It was like, hey, like this guy's either going pro or he might enter the portal and try and get a bag. So it's nice to see that, when you see Jalen Wells, it says drafted out of Washington State University. So that's a big time thing for our program.
Now, the unfortunate thing is Cam Ward drafted out of University of Miami,
Yeah.
John yeah, right. Exactly. Let's hope we can keep some guys here in the coming years. But kind of getting into that Memphis talk, in your episode with Jonah Dillon, you talked about Memphis University and that the Pac-12 had offered them, something to come to the Pac-12, and that basically the offer wasn't any better compared to the American League that they're currently in after the costs, like the net profit for the university wasn't going to change. So why add all of this unnecessary overhead if you're able to take in more revenue, but your expenses are also higher? There's the stress on the players of having to travel across the country. Let's just keep things as simple as possible, keep the same net profit. So we'll see if the Pac-12 comes back with any additional offer to Memphis. There's also talk about and share your insights on whatever media deals or the timeline for when a media deal might come out. There's also the rumors of potentially adding Tulane to the university. What are your thoughts and updates on both Memphis, Tulane, the media deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I think John Canzano is our best reporter right now in terms of getting this information out. And yes, Alicia, Memphis took down West Virginia in their bowl game. I think they were 11-2 in football this past year. We know what we get with their basketball program. Penny Hardaway. I mean, the program has a lot of history. You got guys like Derrick Rose that have played there. So there's obviously like brand recognition that comes along with Memphis basketball. And looking at where they're at in terms of quad 1 and quad 2 opportunities, there's just not there in the AAC. North Texas is like your darling, as like your best opponent. Football wise, like, are you going to really like rely on Navy and Army to be good every year? Especially with, what you get with Navy and Army. I mean, they're a wishbone offense. Like, so, in terms of getting back to the table, like I'll read some quotes here from that interview from their athletic director. Like you said, it was strictly numbers. The deal was not any better per cap, meaning what we get currently from the American to what we needed to go out to the Pac-12, considering the increased travel and some of those other things. It's not how much money you make. It's how much money you have left after paying your bills. It just didn't put us in a position where I felt we could continue our ascension for all of our sports. The interviewer, can the deal be improved? Well, the honest answer is they haven't put a deal back in front of us. I don't live in a what if scenario. If the Pac-12 came back to us, we'd continue to listen and we'd continue to do our due diligence for the University of Memphis. I have to. It's incumbent upon me. To answer your question directly, no foreplay. Let's get right to it. That's the deal. The Pac-12, the deal from the Pac-12 did not do it. So, obviously, when you take a look at what Houston, Cincinnati, and some of those other schools, they had to break away and pay, a $17 million breakaway fee. But a lot of those schools, what they did is they spread it out over, 6 or 7 years in terms of paying that fee. So that's something that you have to do if you're going to be able to get Memphis or Tulane. But Canzano came out and said that initially they came after UTSA, Tulane, Memphis, and South Florida. So Pac-12 leadership was obviously trying to get a quartet of teams to have possibly travel be easier for these 4 AAC teams that are coming in. But at the end of the day, like Memphis, like the ACC's not calling, the Big 12's not calling. Like what are you going to do? The way the Pac-12 has their grant of rights set up, everything expires in 2031. So any school that might be in the Pac-12 that's looking to get into a bigger conference, they'll allow that. So what do you have to lose at this point in terms of generating some fan interest for both of their programs, basketball-wise and football-wise? But when you're just kind of looking at quad one opportunities, they're not there in basketball for Memphis.
In your conversation with Jonah, you guys talked briefly about the media deal and when that might be coming. Is there any idea of when a media deal might be coming for the Pac-12?
I mean, nothing that you can look to and say, hey, this is when it's going to happen. Right. But Canzano, his estimations are somewhere around the NCAA tournament in March. Also, some news came out where it said, hey, they'll get the media deal done before they add that 8th football team or 9th football team. So I'd expect the media rights to be announced before whatever team, fits that 8th billing to make the Pac-12 a legitimate football conference going forward. So they have till July of 2026. But now you're getting to the point where it's like, okay, like what's going to happen here? Who are they going to get? UNLV seems like they're off the table. Sacramento State does a great job at keeping their name in the news, but I don't want any part of that. Like they need to get grounded and geared before you add them to the Pac-12. I think they're more of a fit for the Mountain West first.
And then something that's affecting WSU Pac-12 realignment, the importance of a media deal coming in is that with the federal spending stoppage that has happened, we're trying to get clarity on exactly what is going on. But my understanding is that essentially the federal government is like putting a pause on a lot of the major spending programs to see what is currently being spent, what should stay, what should be cut. And so WSU Board of Regents actually met on Monday to go through a special budget meeting. There's been 11 stop work orders that affect WSU directly, including 7 that are with USAID, 2 via the U.S. Department of State, 2 via the Department of Education, 1 with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And so in this article by QFan.com, they describe that this could have implications of tens of millions of dollars. And with WSU being an R1 university, which is a major research university, like Kirk Schultz was quoted stating, as federal grants are stopped, we can't stop what we are spending today. And that universities essentially are reimbursed. So the money is essentially already being spent. And it's not like the federal government gives them a certain amount of money. They then spend that money over here. It's like they're spending money and this is part of their budget. And then the federal aid helps offset their expenses. So this is money that's still being spent that is coming out of their bottom line. And so if WSU and the Pac-12 can get a media deal done sooner, there's going to be some more reassurance of additional revenue that is coming in. It's not that all of that money that's currently being paused is going to be taken away from WSU. It's that it's going to be gone through with a fine-tooth comb. Some of it might stay, some of it might go away. It might all stay. We don't know. So they're trying to figure out, what exactly to do, how to plan. And they went through, worst case scenario planning. So just another, wrench thrown in things with WSU and funding right now. We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's daunting times. And it always doesn't help reading the headlines either, where you know, it is what it is at this point, right? Like we got to see what this media deal will be. I mean, folks are estimating, it could be as low as $8 million. It could be as high as maybe $13 to $15 million. But you got to remember, WSU was bringing in $30 million a year in media revenue from the Pac-12. That's now gone. And early when the first news broke about Schultz getting the $2 million, not letting our AD know where it was, the way the regents were coming out and talking, we're like, hey, we set the money aside. We care about the athletic programs. Well, now it's kind of done a bit of an about face. So at the end of the day, we got to wait for the media rights to come into play, but you're going to hope that it's in at least $12 million per year.
And then also just to add one thing on this, the university's vice president, Glenda Becker-Fenter, stated that the state of Washington has had a $12 billion deficit across the next 4 years. So that's really, it's really turned into the perfect storm. I think it's going to be an uphill battle for us going forward. And when decisions have to be made in Congress through the budget reconciliation process, it's going to be a very tough road for us going ahead too. So a lot of financials that need to be ironed out and fixed. We'll see exactly what happens with that. Getting into, moving away from that a little bit, let's get into the women's basketball. A quick update there. They had a loss to Portland on Saturday, which all but killed their chances at the 2 seed in the WCC for women's basketball. But they still have a shot at winning the 3 seed. And if they can win the 3 seed, they would get one more day of rest heading into the tournament, which would be big. They're 16-12 currently. They're 11-6 in WCC play. They have 3 games left against San Francisco, St. Mary's, and Pepperdine.
Yeah, I mean, that's big time. You got to stay in that 3 or 4 spot so you don't have to play 4 games in 4 days. Obviously, you'd rather play 3. And the way the West Coast Conference is set up, they're only going to get 1 bid. So it's going to be the conference winner getting that bid to the NCAA tournament. And Cammie Etheridge has just done a fantastic job with this program. And for us to be able to keep her as well this season, I think was big time. You had everybody wanting to leave the boat. Kyle Smith left the boat. Jake Dickert left the boat. Both of those guys, I'm fine with what Kyle Smith did. Obviously, not everybody feels the same way about how Jake Dickert left Washington State University. Kyle obviously had some extracurricular things in terms of some family stuff and just things that Stanford can give you that really I don't think you can get anywhere else on this earth. So, goes into that. But Cammie's done a great job. It's going to be fun watching this team finish up this season and going into West Coast Conference, into the West Coast Conference tournament. So anything can happen with Cammie, in my opinion. She's a hell of a coach. She can win 3 games in 3 days. She's shown it before. Last season in the Pac-12, they win the Pac-12 tournament. So yeah, it's going to be exciting to see how the women's team finishes up.
And we got a quick update from our friends, Wheatfield Underdogs at Twitter, or on Twitter. He said, I guess Riley instructed Beasley ushers to escort any Gonzaga fan out of the student section tonight. So he's really interested to see. He thinks it's going to be a 50-50 split, Cougs Zags. So get them out of here, get them back to their, visitor section, and let's get it rowdy tonight.
You better tell the ushers because the students probably don't know how to get them out. They don't even know how to cheer during the game. So sorry, shots fired.
We need some rally towels or something. Now getting into Cougar baseball, not the best start, but they were facing at number 4 ranked in the country, Arkansas. So you got to take that into account. Really, that's why that first loss was even bigger because they had the lead 2-1 in the 10th inning going into the
Trevor
bottom of the
Stowe
10th.
comes in. Yeah. Trevor Stowe comes in and walks the bases loaded.
Yeah, that's baseball for you. You got to finish strong. It's the full 9 innings or the full, 10.5 innings in that case. But they went 2-3, 2-3. They went 2-14, 2-5, and then 2-12. So they are outscored 8 runs to 34 runs in their 4-game series at number 4 Arkansas. That's their opening series. A couple, well, I guess not standouts yet, but they're pitching WSU baseball, 9.71 ERA, 2.26 WHIP, a 3.14 batting average, and they walked 28 guys while also striking out 28 guys. You can't have a 1-to-1 ratio there if you want to win games, especially a WHIP over 2 to where you're allowing that many runs. It's got to be in the ones.
Sounds like your career stats on the mound.
I did better at club baseball. Come on, give me some credit. Also, shout out Gavin Height, WSU Club Baseball by a million. There we go.
Yeah, if you're a Mariners fan, check out Up West Sports Podcast. Our guy Gavin just started that up.
Some standouts yeah, go for it.
No. Sorry, I was just I cut you off. Go in there for the standouts.
Yeah, so some standouts on the pitching side. We had Griffin Smith, who logged 5 innings pitched. He had an opponent batting average of 188 against, which is great. He had a 1 WHIP, a 0 ERA. Luke Myers also logged 5 innings pitched, a 222 batting average against, a 1 WHIP, 3.6 ERA. And then Rylan Hayter, who logged 3 innings pitched, a 0.67 WHIP, and no batting. He didn't allow a hit, which is great. On the hitting front, they also need to, figure out their game as well. They had a team batting average so far through this series of 202, a 544 OPS, a 246 on base percentage, which isn't going to get it done. They had 37 strikeouts at the plate, only 5 walks. Let's work this dominate the zone mentality that the Mariners have into this team a little bit and find your pitch. Easier said than done, but some standouts on the hitting side. Ryan, I want to say it's Sconsby, who's a corner infielder.
He had 3 doubles. Yeah.
3 doubles, a 400 average, a 1.064 OPS. Over 1,000 OPS is stellar. Outfielder Logan Johnstone has the lone dinger of the team. Got them on the board. Cole Watterson, a 300 average, a 664 OPS. And then
that's
also
a guy that led the NWAC in stolen bases last season. He had 46 steals and 52 attempts.
He's a bags guy. Okay. And then we got outfielder Max Hartman, who had a 273 batting average. And what was the stat on how many players are new this year? Is it something like
24 out of 36. And then you got a lot of the guys who've pitched, the new arms are coming in from the junior college level. Now, granted, Griffin Smith was a junior college All-American, Trevor Stowe, junior college All-American. But, really like this week, these first 4 games is like, you hope you can take 1 game out of the 4. I mean, Arkansas, SEC baseball is just on another level. Okay. Like let's get that straight. It's not easy to go into Fayetteville and try and split a 4-game series with the number 4 team in the country. But what you're looking for is like, you're trying to find who's going to be your guys, who's going to throw strikes, who's pitching well. And Griffin was fantastic. He's got a nasty changeup. And I think 3 or 4 Ks on that changeup alone. If anybody follows Wheels on YouTube, he's fantastic. If you need to find any sort of college baseball highlight, that's the guy to go to. So I think, Coach Show has found his 2 guys that he's going to, pitch Friday. I think you found your Friday night starter in Griffin Smith. So that's the biggest thing right now. But these guys, they've got to throw strikes. And that's the main thing. You're not going to play if you can't throw strikes. So also, like I said in my preview, outfield's going to be where most of this offensive production is going to come from with guys like Logan Johnstone and Max Hartman. Johnstone turned on an inside fastball to put them up 1-0 in that first game. And it was tough too because, all right, Stowe walks the bases loaded. Then he gets his first out on a strikeout, but it's either a pass ball or a wild pitch. So that gets by, that scores a run. Next play is a sac fly. So if you keep that ball in front of you, it's still a 2-2 game with 2 outs, and you're 1 pitch away from getting out of the inning. So it just goes to show you, I mean, you got to throw strikes at this level.
In our preseason conversation with Choate, he stressed throwing strikes. He was like, I'm not okay with ball 1, ball 2, ball to the backstop. I'm okay with you hitting a guy if we're working in on someone and, you hit someone, you're aggressive, but you got to live in the strike zone and work off of that. You can't be walking guys at this type of rate. So the next games for Washington State baseball are the Kleberg Bank Classic this weekend, which is in Corpus Christi, Texas. They're going to be spending a lot of time down in the South to start the season. They got Michigan
games,
State.
Yeah.
They got Michigan State on Friday. They got UCLA Saturday, Texas A&M, Corpus Christi on Sunday. And then as you described, like even February 27th, which is a week and a half from now, they got 4 games against Iowa in Cleburne, Texas. I don't understand why they're playing Iowa in Texas. And then they'll be headed back to WSU for their first series in Pullman.
Well, what you get too is, I mean, you get a lot of these schools, like think about Iowa, think about Washington State in late February. You're not really playing baseball, So a lot of these
playing the indoor complex.
Yeah, you have Oregon State right now that's down in Arizona playing their games. Okay,
that makes sense.
They look like a machine this year. It's great to see Oregon State still vaulted at the top. Our Pac-2 brothers right there, playing an independent
standout true freshman.
Oh, Dax Whitney. I mean, and we'll only spend a minute here on Oregon State, folks, but this Dax Whitney kid, Connor, did you do a profile on him?
I haven't, but pitching ninja.
Yeah. This kid was in Eastern Idaho. Like, imagine being a high school baseball player in Idaho. No offense to you guys out there in Idaho, but the high school baseball is just probably not great. Let's be real here. This guy had 52 innings. Town. Yeah, 52 innings, and he struck out 83% of the batters he faced. So 83% of his outs came via the strikeout. You said a funny comment. It's like, I can't believe he gave up an earned run out there. 0.27 ERA.
He gave up an
It just goes to the fact of like seeing Oregon State still do well with the cards that they were dealt, playing a really tough independent schedule this year. I'm pretty sure when the Cougs decided to go to the Mountain West, I think they were like, hey, Beavs, like, do whatever you guys got to do. Like, we're obviously not on the same level as you guys right now. So it's just good to see that they're continuing, their prowess in college baseball.
Yeah, Oregon State's known as a baseball university, and kind of working off of that. There's also a few WSU baseball standouts that we're working on getting on the podcast that are currently playing in the big leagues. So we got Ryan Walker, who is the closing pitcher for the Giants right now. We got Kyle Manzardo, who's a first base DH guy for the Cleveland Guardians. He was
former teammate of
yours.
Well, not Manzardo, but your next, not Manzardo, but the next guy you're about to say.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Manzardo was actually a Portland Pickle, and if you haven't seen the Portland Pickles documentary, go to MLB.tv. It's you could watch it there. It's called Pickles. But then also Ian Hamilton, who's a relief pitcher for the Yankees. He was also in the playoffs. All of these guys are standouts. Make sure to check them out. We're hoping to get them on the podcast. So, you can come to Washington State, like we also talked about with Choate. You can come to Washington State, have a great time, play some great baseball, go play professionally, and have great success. So it really doesn't matter where you are. Like, come to Washington State. It's a great time, and you have the opportunity there.
We're working our butts off to get Ryan Walker on the show. We have a couple buddies that played with him at Washington State. So he's a guy that doesn't really check his Instagram very often. So our message is just sitting there waiting. It's just
you can only imagine how like blown up these guys get. Like, they don't hear from anyone their entire minor league career, like throughout college, and then they finally make their debut. They start to stand out in the major leagues. Now everyone wants 5 seconds with them, right? So we're working our angle, but hoping to get him on. I'll also be in Arizona for spring training. I think Dylan might be down there for a bit, hoping to get some in-person interviews with some of these guys too.
Yeah. It's just crazy to see what Ryan Walker has been able to do. I mean, he was a guy that was drafted I believe around in the 30th or 31st round. And now the MLB draft, I think, is capped at 24 or 26 rounds. So like his draft selection's not even there anymore. Like, they cut it. So what he's been able to do, overtake Camilo Doval, who is a 2-time All-Star closer for the San Francisco Giants. He's coming into this season as the starting closer, and you got to like what that Giants organization is doing. They axed Farhan, and of course Farhan climbs his way back to the Dodgers. You bring in Buster Posey as your new, president, GM. So, that's big time. They bring in Willie Adames this offseason. So NL West is tough. It's a tough division, especially with what the Dodgers are getting away with. We could just put $1 billion. Let's just defer $1 billion. Like, it's ridiculous. They're breaking baseball. I can't stand it. I hate it. And then, Corbin Burns, Bakersfield boy, he pitched at St. Mary's. That's maybe a possible, basketball and other sports edition for the Pac-12. They've been posturing, but we'll see. They just don't really have the facilities. It's exciting to see. I think Ryan Walker too, in the top fantasy 100 for Yahoo. I think he's ranked like 77th and the 3rd best closer. So if you're a fantasy baseball player, hey, get Ryan Walker on the team. He's going to have starting pitching eligibility as well as relief pitching eligibility, depending upon what league you're in. So I know that's something Connor and I have on the agenda, is doing a fantasy baseball preview. Because I need to know how he's thinking before we have our live draft here in San Diego. But
just don't watch that episode. I'll be lying for an hour. So,
looking forward to try and get Manzardo. I don't think Ian Hamilton. I have not seen any sort of Instagram or social media on his side of things.
He had a calf strain in the playoffs in the ALCS, and so he didn't make the World Series roster. He's dealt with injuries throughout his career. Hopefully he comes back strong, but he's been kind of one of like the 6th, 7th, 8th inning guy. He's never been the closer. He did get a couple of saves for them, but he's got some nasty stuff. Yeah,
some real nasty stuff. They call him the ham bone. And then last thing on Kyle Manzardo before we kind of finish up here. Manzardo, he's going into this season and this spring training as their guy at first base with the Guardians. It's his to lose. We saw that big time homer against the Yankees. Manzardo has just a sweet swing. I mean, it's fantastic. Just your prototypical, beautiful left-handed swing that you just can't teach. And, that's a guy that you find in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So like you said, hey, the MLB scouts, it doesn't matter where you are, they will find you.
Yeah, they traded Josh Naylor to the Diamondbacks this offseason, who was their first baseman. They did sign Carlos Santana, so we'll see if Santana is playing first base or if they're going to have Manzardo at first base. Probably switch back and forth between him and Santana at first base and DH. And then real quick on Ryan Walker before we move into football. I mean, his stats are ridiculous. I didn't even realize how good they were. He pitched 80 innings this last year, 76 games. So he basically pitched in half of the Giants' games, a 1.91 ERA, a 0.85 whip. That's walks plus hits allowed per inning. And then an 11.1 strikeouts per 9 and a 2 walks per 9. And you look at his crossbody delivery, his motion, he's got that sinker slider. Yeah, look, that's his baseball savant right
Look
there.
At that baseball savant page. That's ridiculous. He's in the 98th and 99th percentiles for a lot of different stats. And he works out of that crossfire delivery. So it's tough to pick up.
And he's got the sinker breaking like 15 inches.
Yeah.
He's got the slider breaking like 20 inches the other way. So it's like, good luck. And that sinker's at 98.
Hard hit rate, 98th percentile.
0.
K percentage, 94th percentile. Average exit velocity, meaning how hard are opponents hitting his baseball? They're not. 94th percentile. Expected batting average, 94th percentile. Expected ERA, 96th percentile. He is going to be an all-star this year if he continues this up. The biggest thing for him was he jumped into that closer role late, didn't really have the stats to get you in. Also, the Giants are going to have to be a little decent to get a couple all-stars in as well, so you're not just having one guy or two guys, get in there.
Now, heading into our last segment, make sure to comment below if you have any other questions, thoughts, topics that you'd like us to cover. But we're getting into spring football here. The Jimmy Rogers era is underway. March 1st is the start of spring ball for the football team. It will finish with the spring game at Gisa Field in Pullman, Washington on April 12th. So some differences from the prior tenure from the Dickert days are that apparently media is locked out of the weekday practices. So they'll have availability on the weekend practices. The schedule is going to be Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday schedule. And a majority, those weekday practices are actually starting at 6:30 a.m. So they're going to have early start times. But yeah, there will also be an open practice in Spokane at One Spokane Stadium on Saturday, March 29th. Afterwards, there will be an hour-long kids clinic immediately following. So I'm really excited to see how this team looks in spring ball in that spring game, April 12th. A lot of things to be excited for the football team.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch Angel Johnson and his 7.1 yards per carry come in. Kirby Voorhees. It's exciting. It's exciting to see. But spring ball is going to be big time for getting everybody together, understanding, hey, techniques, everything that's going to be put into motion with this new defense and with this new offense. So it all starts in spring ball. And after spring ball, we'll see what Rodgers and his staff can do in the portal, recruiting wise, maybe bringing in a few more pieces. You'd like to see maybe a couple more offensive linemen come in after Jake Dickert raided our lineman cupboard. So there's still some pieces to pick up, but I think when we're taking a look at what Vegas is probably going to have as a over under for wins, it's probably going to be 5.5 to 6 this year, and I'm taking the over. So let's get it cooking here. Let's get into spring.
And from CougFan.com's count, there are 32 new players on the roster, just 21 that are returning. Obviously, the transfer portal accounted to that, the graduations, but a lot of new faces coming in, like something like 15 from South Dakota State alone. So a lot to be excited for. And then adding on top of that, Kyle Williams, he is now going to be, showing off his skills in the combine. He was one of the standouts during the Senior Bowl week. Asa Pole was left out of the combine, which is disappointing. But one scout for Kyle Williams initially had him as an early 4th rounder heading into Senior week. And then after the Senior Bowl, they have him now somewhere in the 3rd round. ESPN currently ranks Kyle Williams as the number 16 wide receiver, the number 149 NFL prospect overall. And March 1st is going to be Kyle Williams combine workout. So that's less than 2 weeks away now. Make sure to tune into that one. Watch his 40, watch him run routes. He's watching some of those clips on Twitter from the Senior Bowl. He dusted guys, and he's breaking ankles out there.
His release is nasty. I mean, he's just a fantastic football player. And it was so fun to watch him in the Holiday Bowl breaking Des Bryant's record. And I think really he didn't have to play in that game, but he played in that game and his stock rose simply because of that. So I think he's a guy that you can see taken in the 5th or the 6th or 7th round. I think the NFL draft's still split into 3 days, or 2 days. It's either day 2 or day 3 draft pick. Lewis Riddick likes him. That's a guy that has been high on some WSU players coming out of school. He's very high on Jaden Hicks, Jalen Watson. You saw what those two did. I mean, Jalen Watson, man, that guy, talk about like being put in the right situation. He had an opportunity to have 3 years in the NFL and have 3 NFL rings, but luckily my Eagles took him down. That wasn't happening, Jalen. I'm sorry. You got 2 though.
Yeah. So, be tuned into the NFL Combine. That'll be exciting. But yeah, that does it for this episode. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Dylan, for jumping on. This will be the first of many. So today was Wednesday because we had the Gonzaga game tonight. But moving forward, we'll be doing these live streams Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific. So make sure to tune in next week. We'll be recapping all things WSU athletics. Again, thanks for tuning in. Go Cougs.